911, what's your emergency?
Okay, well, I just want to let you know that I have a roommate that should be leaving at the end of the month. We had a conversation today that he kind of freaked me out.
11 days later, Maribel Ramos was gone. But here's the part no one talks about. She knew exactly who she was afraid of. She called for help, and the system failed her. The dispatcher didn't take her seriously. The police brushed her off, and everyone ignored the biggest clue she gave them. They called her paranoid, blamed alcohol, said she was overreacting. Meanwhile, the man she feared was right there, watching.
Best friend, actually, she's my only friend, only family member I have.
This wasn't just a missing persons case or a tragic accident. It was something much worse. Maribel had unknowingly left behind the key to solving her own disappearance, but no one put the pieces together until it was too late. If they had just listened, would she still be alive? What happened next isn't just disturbing, it's proof that sometimes the people we trust to protect us are the ones who fail us most. At first, it seemed like the perfect arrangement. Maribel Ramos was a fighter, literally. An army veteran who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. She had seen war, hardship, and death. But now she was finally home, chasing her dreams. A criminal justice degree, a bright future, and for the first time in years, a sense of stability. And then there was Casey Joy, the quiet, older roommate who had been living with her for over a year. A man who, on the surface, seemed harmless, friendly, even fatherly. He was 18 years older than her, soft-spoken, and always eager to help. They had traveled together, taken vacations. At one point, they were even close friends. At least, that's what Maribel thought. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Casey Joy wasn't just a friend. He wasn't just a helpful roommate. He was obsessed. But obsession doesn't always start as something obvious. It creeps in like a shadow. It starts as small gestures, offering to pay for dinner, lingering a little too long in conversation, making offhand comments about how special she was.
Best friend, actually, she's my only friend.
Maribel brushed it off. She was friendly with everyone. Why wouldn't KC be friendly back? But then, things started to change. He stopped acting like a roommate and started acting like a boyfriend. Except Maribel never agreed to that. She wasn't interested. She had made that clear. And that's when things got uncomfortable. KC started paying too much attention. He changed his appearance, new clothes, expensive plastic surgery. He wanted to look younger, more attractive. For her. He got a massive tattoo of her favorite character. For her. He spent thousands of dollars trying to become someone he thought she would love. But Maribel didn't love him. And Casey Joy could not accept that. So what happens when an obsessed man realizes the woman he's fixated on will never feel the same? What happens when rejection turns into resentment? And what happens when resentment turns into something far, far worse? Because in less than 2 weeks, Maribel Ramos would be dead. Maribel Ramos wanted him out. No more excuses. No more delays. The rent was due, and KC wasn't paying. She had carried the weight of their apartment for months, but she was done playing caretaker. For 18 months, she had given him grace. Given him time. But time wasn't fixing anything. Casey Joy was a 54-year-old man with no job, no income, and no intention of changing. And Maribel? She wasn't going to carry him any longer. You need to leave. It wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum. Maribel had just 1 day before rent was due, and she was out of options. If Casey wasn't going to pay, he was going to pack his things and go. No more second chances. But Casey Joy didn't see it that way. He didn't see this as a financial issue. He saw it as betrayal. He had convinced himself they had a special bond. He had changed himself for her. The new hair, the younger clothes, the thousands of dollars on plastic surgery. None of it mattered now. Maribel didn't love him. She never had. And now, she didn't even want to live under the same roof as him. Casey argued, pleaded. But Maribel didn't budge. He had no money, no job, nowhere to go. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Maribel didn't care anymore. She had already moved on. She was dating someone new, someone younger. And that's when something inside KC snapped. In his mind, this wasn't just about rent. It wasn't just about money. This was about control. And if he couldn't have Maribel Ramos in his life, then she wouldn't have one either. It started with a fight. Maribel was done. She had given KC Joy a place to stay, a roof over his head, and too much time to get his life together. But now, she was tired of the excuses, the delays, the manipulative guilt trips. She wanted him out. But Casey had no intention of leaving. The argument spiraled. Voices raised. Tension suffocated the apartment. And then Maribel did something chilling. She called 911.
Hi, Orange Police. Okay, well, I just want to let you know that I have a roommate that should be leaving at the end of the month. We had a conversation today that he kind of freaked me out. I'm not feeling comfortable around him anymore. I'm feeling threatened.
What's your name?
My name is Maribel. My name is
What's your last name, Maribel?
Ramos Ariel.
Okay.
I want him to leave, and from now until then, I just feel like I have to lock my door, which I will, because he sounded like he would hurt me. Like, it was weird.
Why are you crying?
Because I'm afraid.
No officers came. No one checked in. Her fear, her last recorded cry for help, was brushed off. And 11 days later, she was gone. That night, after the fight, Casey said he left the apartment to cool off. But when he returned, Maribel had vanished. Or at least, that's what he wanted everyone to believe. Her car was still parked outside. Her bedroom light was on, but her bed, unmade. A single, eerie detail caught everyone's attention. Her pillowcase was missing. And from that moment on, the search for Maribel Ramos turned into a race against time. At first, no one panicked. Maribel was independent, always on the move, balancing school, social events, and her future career in criminal justice. Missing a phone call, normal. Running late, it happened. But missing everything, a baseball game, a court hearing, calls from her sister, that wasn't like her. Her family tried to stay calm, telling themselves she would turn up soon. Maybe she was just busy. Maybe she needed space after the fight with Casey. But the unease grew. Lucy, her sister, started calling, again and again, straight to voicemail. She texted. No response. By that night, she had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. She drove to Maribel's apartment. A scene frozen in time. Her car, parked outside, untouched. Her bedroom light, still glowing. But when Lucy stepped inside, she knew instantly. Maribel never left that apartment on her own. The bed was unmade, sheets messy, like someone had been interrupted. A pillowcase was missing. A small detail, one that wouldn't mean anything under normal circumstances. But now, it felt important. It felt wrong. And then there was Casey. He stood there, calm, too calm. He told Lucy the same story he later told police. We argued. I left to cool off. When I came back, she was gone. No emotion, no urgency, no panic. Lucy wasn't buying it. She knew Maribel better than anyone. If she had left, she would have taken her car, her keys, her phone, not just vanished into thin air, leaving everything behind. So Lucy did what the police hadn't done days earlier. She raised the alarm. She took to social media, flooding Facebook and Twitter with pictures of Maribel, asking if anyone had seen her. Friends, classmates, even strangers shared her posts. Within hours, the search for Maribel had gone public. And it wasn't just her family looking anymore. The police were now involved. They questioned Casey, retraced Maribel's last known movements, and reviewed security footage. They pulled her phone records, combed through her texts, her calls. That's when they found Paul Lopez, the last person to speak with Maribel before she vanished. A new suspect? Paul Lopez had been dating Maribel casually for a few months. The two had talked on the phone just before she disappeared. He was the last person to hear her voice. Instantly, detectives zeroed in. Was this a jealous ex? A hidden motive? But when they brought him in, his alibi was airtight. Paul had been at work the night of May 2nd. Surveillance cameras backed him up. So did his co-workers. He had no connection to the disappearance. But he did have one piece of key information. Paul revealed that Maribel had been furious with Casey Joy, that she wanted him gone immediately, that she had even threatened to throw his stuff out if he didn't leave. She was done with him, and Casey knew it. Now, the focus shifted back to the one person who had no alibi, the one person who had everything to lose if Maribel kicked him out, the last person to see her alive. Casey Joy. At first, Casey Joy played the role of the concerned roommate, perfectly cooperating with police, calling Maribel's family, even making emotional pleas for her return. But something was off. His concern felt calculated, rehearsed, like he was following a script. Detectives watched him closely, and the more he talked, the more his story unraveled. He claimed Maribel was overwhelmed with stress, that she might have run away. But if that were true, why had she left everything behind? Her phone, her car, her wallet? It didn't add up. And then came the first major red flag. Just days after Maribel disappeared, Casey started behaving strangely. Instead of searching for her, he spent hours online, using public computers at the library. When detectives checked his search history, they found something chilling: how to hide a body. It wasn't just one search, it was several. Different phrasing, different variations, all leading to the same horrifying conclusion. Casey Joy wasn't looking for his missing roommate. He was looking for ways to make sure she stayed missing. But that wasn't all. Casey kept going back to the same location, a secluded park near the mountains, always alone, always lingering. At first, detectives thought nothing of it. But then they realized something. He was leading them straight to the crime scene. Now, detectives had what they needed. They just had to watch and wait. Casey Joy thought he was smarter than everyone, that he could lie, manipulate, and twist the truth until the police had no choice but to look somewhere else. But he made one fatal mistake. He underestimated the detectives watching him. They knew he was hiding something. His bizarre internet searches, his shifting story, his sudden obsession with a secluded park, it all pointed to one thing. Casey knew where Maribel was. But instead of confronting him directly, investigators decided to play a different game. They let him think he was in the clear. No accusations, no pressure. They even let him continue using public computers at the library. But what Casey didn't know, every single keystroke was being monitored. And then he did exactly what they were waiting for. Casey Joy pulled up Google Maps and zoomed in on one specific area, a remote stretch of land tucked away from the main road. He stared at it, scrolled in, zoomed out, then zoomed back in. Detectives had seen enough. They raced to the coordinates, hearts pounding, knowing they were about to uncover the truth. And when they got there, they found her. Maribel Ramos, buried beneath a pile of rocks. Hidden, but not gone. Casey had tried to erase her, but now there was no escaping what he had done. Casey Joy had no idea the walls were closing in. He still believed he could talk his way out of anything, that the police didn't have enough to pin him down. But when they brought him in for questioning again, everything changed. This time, they weren't just asking him where Maribel was. They already knew. They laid out the evidence, his suspicious internet searches, his erratic behavior, and the final nail in the coffin, his GPS search that led them straight to Maribel's body. Casey froze. His usual smug confidence cracked for the first time. He stammered, tried to laugh it off, but the detectives weren't buying it. Why were you looking at that location, Casey? Why were you going back there over and over? How did you know where she was? He had no answers, no excuses, no way out. Instead, he slumped back in his chair, arms crossed, and said nothing. But his silence said everything. When the cuff snapped around Casey Joy's wrist, he didn't fight. He didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. He just stood there, eyes blank, as if none of this was real. As if Maribel's life, the woman who fed him, housed him, called him a friend, meant nothing. No remorse, no regret, not a single word about the woman he had stolen from the world. And when detectives asked him again, "Did you kill Maribel?" his answer was chilling. "I loved her." Not a confession, not an apology, just those 3 words, twisted beyond recognition. Because love doesn't bury a body in the dirt and walk away. Love doesn't ignore a family's cries, a mother's heartbreak, a sister's desperate search for the truth. Love doesn't erase a future, a career, a life that was just getting started. But Casey Joy didn't see Maribel as a person. He saw her as something he was owed. And when she made it clear that he wasn't part of her future, he did the unthinkable. And then, he sat back, watched her family beg for answers, and pretended he had none to give. When the trial began in January 2014, prosecutors made their case. Casey Joy was not a victim. He was not some poor, heartbroken man down on his luck. He was a man who couldn't take no for an answer. A man who had no money, no home, no stability, and the only thing keeping him afloat was Maribel. And when she told him he had to leave, he made sure she never had the chance to see him go. They argued that, rejected and enraged by the rent dispute and impending eviction, Casey suffocated Maribel in her sleep and dumped her body in a remote area. The missing pillowcase, the chilling internet searches, his obsessive behavior, all of it led back to one inescapable truth. Casey Joy killed Maribel Ramos. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. Second-degree murder. 15 years to life. And yet, even after the verdict, after the sentencing, after every detail of his crime had been laid bare, Casey Joy still denied it. To this day, he swears he's innocent. He plays the victim, tells anyone who will listen that he was wrongfully convicted. He writes letters from prison, claiming that if Maribel were alive, she'd forgive him. Forgive him for what? And here's the part that should terrify everyone. Casey Joy will be eligible for parole in just a few years. He spent his time behind bars studying the legal system, figuring out exactly how to act, what to say, to convince a parole board that he's changed. And if he walks free, he's already made it clear he plans to find another Maribel. Think about that. A man who took everything from a woman who showed him kindness could soon be living among us again, looking for another place to stay, another woman to manipulate, another life to destroy. And the most terrifying question of all, who will be next? Was Casey Joy a cold-blooded killer who planned this all along, or just a desperate man who snapped when his world fell apart? And here's something even scarier. He could be free again soon. So what do you think? Should Casey Joy ever be released? Or does a man like this deserve to stay locked up forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love deep dives into true crime, hit that subscribe button now.